It was a quiet evening on Earth, the sun just beginning to set as the protagonist, a young man named Liam, walked home from his work. He was tired, but there was a strange excitement in the air, like something was about to happen, something unexpected. He never could have imagined just how right he was. As he turned the corner onto his street, a blinding light appeared overhead. A huge ship, unlike anything he had ever seen, hovered above. The air felt heavy, as if time had slowed down. His heart raced. Was this some sort of military operation, or was Earth finally under attack? Before he could even think, a loud voice echoed down from the ship. "Human," the voice called. Liam froze in place, looking up. Standing at the top of the ship's ramp was an alien woman, tall and imposing, her eyes glowing with authority. She had an aura of power, unlike anything Liam had ever seen. His mouth went dry as she stepped forward, her gaze never leaving him. "I come with an offer," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You are to be wed to me, or Earth will face consequences beyond your understanding." Liam blinked, trying to process her words. "Married? To you? What are you talking about?" The woman's expression didn't change, her alien features sharp and unyielding. "You, human, are the chosen one. A marriage to me is required by our laws. You will be the one to save Earth from destruction." Liam laughed nervously, not believing a word. This is a joke, right? A prank? But the look in her eyes told him this was no joke. She wasn't joking. She wasn't human. This was real. The woman took another step closer, her presence overwhelming. "There is no choice, human. The marriage must occur. The alternative is the destruction of your planet." Liam's mind raced. The idea of marrying an alien was insane. How could he even consider this? Yet, as much as he wanted to refuse, something deep inside him told him there was no escaping this. The woman's voice was calm but carried the weight of power behind it. "You have 1 hour to prepare," she said. "Meet me at the designated location." With that, she turned and walked back up the ramp into the ship. Liam stood frozen for a moment, still trying to understand what had just happened. It felt like a bad dream, but there was no waking up from this one. Liam stood in the middle of his living room, staring at the clock. 1 hour. He had exactly 60 minutes to prepare for something he couldn't fully understand. His mind was still spinning from the shock of the earlier encounter. Was this really happening? Was he really going to marry an alien woman? His hand shook as he paced back and forth. He tried to think of a way out of this. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe if he refused, they would leave him alone, and everything would go back to normal. But the words of the alien queen echoed in his mind. "The alternative is the destruction of your planet." His heart sank. Earth's future depended on this. But how could he marry someone he didn't know? Someone from another world? It felt impossible. With no time left to waste, Liam grabbed a jacket and headed out the door. He walked toward the designated meeting spot, his feet feeling heavier with each step. The streets were eerily quiet. He had expected chaos, maybe people running in panic or government officials trying to handle the situation. But nothing, just an unsettling silence. When Liam arrived at the location, he saw the ship again, hovering just above the ground. The same powerful alien woman stood waiting at the bottom of the ramp. This time, she wasn't alone. There were a few other beings, also alien, standing by, observing him. Their eyes seemed to follow his every move, making him feel small and insignificant in comparison. The woman's gaze locked onto his as he approached. She didn't speak at first, just studied him. Liam felt an odd sense of dread creep over him. Her eyes were cold, but there was something else in them. An intense focus, as if she was trying to figure him out. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding. Liam opened his mouth to protest, but the words caught in his throat. What was there to say? The woman was right. There was no other choice. He had to go through with it. He nodded slowly, unsure of what to expect. He felt like he was walking into a trap, but deep down, he knew this was beyond him. This wasn't just a marriage, it was the fate of his planet. The alien queen smiled, though it wasn't a warm smile. It was more like a gesture of recognition, as if she had won, and he had no other option but to accept. Good. Follow me. Liam walked up the ramp, feeling the cold metal under his feet. Inside the ship, everything was sleek and foreign. There were no walls as he knew them, just smooth, reflective surfaces that seemed to change and shift as they moved. His stomach twisted with every step. He took deeper into the ship. It felt like he was stepping into another world entirely. Once inside, the queen led him to a large chamber. The room was filled with strange symbols and glowing objects he couldn't even begin to understand. At the center of the room was an altar, a simple but imposing structure. And in front of it, an ancient-looking book rested on a pedestal. "You are ready now," she said. Liam swallowed hard. There was no turning back. The ceremony was about to begin. Liam stood at the altar, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never imagined he would be in a situation like this, on the brink of marriage to an alien queen. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the ship, the walls glowing with unfamiliar lights. He could barely take in the details of the strange surroundings. His mind was focused on the alien woman standing before him. She was taller than any human he had ever seen, her skin smooth and a pale shade of violet. Her eyes, the color of the deepest ocean, watched him with an intensity that made him feel both uncomfortable and captivated. There was no warmth in her gaze, only coldness, and a sense of power that sent chills down his spine. "Are you ready?" she asked again, her voice quiet but firm, like a ruler preparing to give an order. Liam swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, to ask questions, to refuse, but the words wouldn't come. What was there to say? She had already made her demands clear, and Earth's future was at stake. If he didn't follow through with this, there was no telling what might happen to his world. He nodded stiffly, unsure of how to even proceed. The queen raised her hand, and the room seemed to shift around them. Strange, glowing symbols appeared in the air, floating like ethereal mist. Liam's heart raced faster as he realized this was no ordinary ceremony. It wasn't just a marriage, it was something more, something ancient. The queen's people had rituals that were beyond his understanding, and he was about to become part of it all. The queen stepped closer to him, her presence overwhelming. She placed her cold hand on his, and Liam flinched involuntarily. Her skin was smooth, but it felt like ice against his. She didn't seem to notice. She looked into his eyes with an expression that could have been mistaken for indifference. But to Liam, it felt like something deeper, a silent challenge. "You are to be mine, human. You will do your duty," she said, her words sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. Liam's chest tightened. "What do you mean by duty?" he asked, the question escaping him before he could stop it. He had to know. He had to understand why this was happening to him. The queen's eyes darkened slightly, her face unreadable. "Our species is dying. We need an heir, a symbol of strength to ensure the survival of my people. You, human, are part of a prophecy that links your bloodline to our future." Liam stood there, stunned. "A prophecy?" he repeated, barely able to comprehend what she was saying. He was just an ordinary guy. What kind of prophecy could possibly involve him? The queen didn't answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she held his gaze for a long moment, before finally speaking again, her voice softer, though still authoritative. "You are the key to saving us all. And now, we begin." With that, she turned toward the altar, the strange symbols in the air glowing brighter. Liam followed her, his mind racing, still trying to wrap his head around the idea that this was happening, that he was truly part of something far larger than himself. And yet, a part of him couldn't deny the strange connection he felt, something that went beyond the cold marriage he had been forced into. Liam's mind raced as the strange symbols continued to float in the air. The Queen's words echoed in his head. You are part of a prophecy. He was still trying to process everything. He had come to the ship as a confused, unwilling participant, but now, standing before the altar, he was beginning to feel a sense of foreboding. What had he really agreed to? The alien Queen stood tall beside him, her cold presence making everything feel more intense. The symbols in the air seemed to swirl, pulsing with a life of their own, as if reacting to the ceremony. Liam could feel a strange pressure building, not just from the alien world around him, but from the responsibility that was suddenly thrust upon him. This wasn't just a marriage, it was a link between two worlds. His world, Earth, and hers. He glanced at her side profile. Despite her authority and regal air, he noticed something he hadn't before. There was a small hint of sadness in her eyes, a glimmer of vulnerability buried deep beneath the cold exterior. For a moment, Liam almost saw her as more than just the alien queen he had been forced to marry. He saw someone who was trapped in her own way. Someone who, just like him, had no control over the path their lives were on. Liam couldn't deny that something about her made him want to understand more. But could he really trust her? After all, this entire marriage was based on a prophecy, and the fate of Earth rested on him fulfilling this obligation. How could he truly know if he was part of some larger plan, or if he was just a pawn in a game far beyond his understanding? He shifted uncomfortably, looking away from her piercing gaze. The Queen noticed his unease but didn't react. Her focus was entirely on the altar, where the ancient book lay open, waiting for the next part of the ceremony. Do you understand what is at stake, human? She asked quietly, her voice carrying an unspoken weight. She didn't need to raise her voice to make Liam feel the full force of her words. He nodded, though his stomach churned with confusion. I think so, he replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. But I still don't know why I'm the one you need. Why me? The Queen paused, her fingers brushing over the ancient book's pages. Our species is dying. Our race has been reduced to near extinction. The prophecy speaks of a human, someone with the blood of the ancients in his veins. You are that human. Liam frowned. Blood of the ancients. I'm just an ordinary guy. I have no idea what you're talking about. The Queen turned to face him fully now, her eyes locking with his. Your bloodline was chosen long ago, long before your birth. Your ancestors made a pact with my people. And now you must fulfill their promise. Liam's head was spinning. A pact. He was linked to this alien race through his ancestors. How could this be possible? I don't even know who my ancestors were, he muttered, his voice filled with frustration. How could I be part of this? The Queen's expression softened ever so slightly. Sometimes the answers we seek are buried deep within us, human. It is not always clear who we are, or why we are chosen. But the path has already been set for you. Liam stood in stunned silence, the weight of her words pressing down on him. There was no escape from this, no turning back. He was caught in something far bigger than himself, and for the first time, he wasn't sure if he was ready to face it. The room felt colder as Liam tried to process the Queen's words. The weight of the situation was suffocating, and every time he looked at the alien Queen, her intense gaze made it feel like she could see straight into his soul. She was so sure, so confident about everything. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking blindfolded into something he couldn't escape. They stood there in silence for a few moments, both of them lost in their thoughts. The Queen, however, was not one to wait too long. She took a deep breath, as though preparing herself for something she had been holding back for a long time. Her eyes softened just a fraction, though her regal posture never faltered. You don't understand the full scope of this, do you? She asked, her voice quieter now, almost a whisper. Liam looked at her, his confusion still clear. What do you mean? You're saying my ancestors made some kind of deal with your people, but I don't even know who they were. I don't know anything about this prophecy. The Queen took a step closer, her face just inches from his. For a moment, Liam felt an odd sense of vulnerability in her, as though she was about to share something that might change everything. He hadn't seen her this close before. Her alien features were sharp and striking, but now he saw something else, something deeper than just cold royalty. "I've kept this from you for as long as I could," she began, her voice steady despite the raw emotion hidden beneath it. "The truth is, this marriage wasn't just a political decision or part of some prophecy. It's the last hope for my people." Her gaze turned away for a moment, as though she was fighting something back. "We are dying, Liam. My species, my entire race. We're on the brink of extinction." Liam felt a chill run down his spine. He had never imagined the situation was this dire. He thought it was all about politics and power, but now it seemed so much more personal. The Queen continued, her eyes now meeting his again. "You may not understand this now, but your bloodline is key to the survival of my people. You are the product of a union between humans and my species, one that was kept secret for generations. Your ancestors agreed to it willingly, to ensure our survival. And now it is your turn to fulfill that promise." Liam's head swam with the new information. He was linked to this alien species not just by some distant prophecy, but by his very blood. "Wait, what? My bloodline?" He was struggling to comprehend. "How could I possibly be involved in something like this? I didn't even know about it." The Queen's expression grew more somber. I know how hard this is for you. But you are the last of your line, the final hope for both our peoples. You are not just a man in this story, Liam. You are the key to saving everything." Liam stared at her, speechless for a moment. The weight of her words pressed on him, making everything feel like a dream he couldn't wake from. His life, his bloodline. Everything was tied to a fate he didn't even know existed. "You didn't have a choice, just like me," she added softly. "But together, we can change everything." Liam's heart pounded as he looked at her. She wasn't just an alien queen. She was someone carrying the fate of her entire species, just as he was now carrying his own. And maybe, just maybe, this was something they could face together. Liam stood still, his mind racing after the Queen's confession. The truth felt like a heavy weight pressing down on him, crushing him. His ancestors, a pact, a promise made long before he was born. He had never asked for any of this. All his life, he had been an ordinary person, going about his business on Earth. And now, here he was, linked to a dying alien race, and forced into a marriage he didn't want. The Queen watched him carefully, as though studying his every reaction. Her expression was still cold, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe hope or maybe desperation. She was carrying the burden of her people's survival on her shoulders, just as he was now. He could feel it, a bond beginning to form between them, though neither of them fully understood it. "Are you angry with me?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with a rare vulnerability. Liam blinked, surprised by the question. His first instinct was to say yes. He was angry that he had been dragged into this. But as he looked at her, standing there so strong yet so vulnerable, something shifted in him. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was confused, scared, and yes, a little part of him was starting to feel sympathy for her. But more than that, he felt a responsibility that he hadn't felt before. "I don't know what to feel," he admitted, his voice low. "I don't even know who I am in all of this. But what I do know is that I never asked for any of this. I didn't ask to be your savior. I didn't ask for Earth to be tied to your people's future." The Queen's eyes softened slightly, but she didn't look away. "I understand. You were thrown into this without warning, without choice. But I need you to understand that you are the only one who can save us now. Your bloodline. It's what will ensure our survival." Liam ran a hand through his hair, feeling overwhelmed. "And what if I can't do it? What if I fail? What happens then?" The Queen took a step closer to him, her gaze steady and unwavering. "If you fail, my people will perish. Our species will die. Earth, too, could be in danger. This is not just about our race. It is about the balance of the galaxy. If you cannot fulfill this role, there will be consequences that no one can stop. Liam swallowed hard, the gravity of her words settling over him. There was no way to back out now. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't just about his confusion or fear. It was about the survival of two worlds. He couldn't ignore that. He looked at her, feeling a strange mix of emotions: fear, anger, curiosity, and something else. Was it compassion? It was hard to tell. But he knew one thing for sure. The weight of destiny had fallen on his shoulders, and there was no escaping it. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Liam said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The Queen's eyes softened, and for the first time, she seemed almost human to him. "None of us are ready, Liam. But together, we will face it. And together, we might just succeed." Liam took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He wasn't ready, not by a long shot. But if there was any chance to save both their worlds, he had no choice but to try. The days passed in a blur for Liam. He spent most of his time in the alien palace, trying to adjust to the strange, glowing walls and the alien technology that seemed to breathe around him. Every corner of the ship felt like it was watching him, waiting for him to accept his new role. And yet, despite everything, there was something about the Queen that made him stay. She wasn't the cold, distant ruler he had once believed her to be. She was just as trapped in this situation as he was. Liam couldn't deny that he had begun to feel something for her. She was strong, unyielding, and at times fiercely protective. But there was also a quiet sadness behind her eyes, a longing for something that had been lost long before he had ever arrived. The more he spent time with her, the more he realized that her emotions, though hidden behind a wall of duty, were real. She had sacrificed so much for her people, and now she was willing to sacrifice even more for their survival. One evening, they sat together in the palace's grand chamber, the distant stars twinkling outside the massive windows. Liam had asked her about her past, about what had led her to this point. She hesitated at first, but then, as if she had been waiting for someone to ask, she began to speak. "My people, we were once thriving," she began, her voice soft but steady. "We were a proud race, exploring the galaxy, forging alliances with many other species. But all of that changed when the war began. Our enemies were relentless. They destroyed everything we had built. And now we are on the brink of extinction." Liam listened quietly, his heart heavy. He had never imagined that the Queen's strength had come from such a painful past. He wanted to reach out to her, to say something comforting, but the words felt hollow. "What happened to the others?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. The Queen's eyes darkened. "Many of them are gone. The war took everything, our homes, our families. We have been running, hiding for so long. My people are now scattered across the galaxy, their numbers too small to fight back. But the prophecy..." She trailed off, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. Liam felt a deep sense of sorrow for her people. "And that's why you needed me, because of the prophecy." She nodded slowly. "Yes, you are the key. Your bloodline is the last chance for us. But even more than that, you are my partner. In every sense. We are bound together now, Liam. And whether you want to or not, we will face this together." For the first time, the Queen's cold exterior cracked. Her vulnerability was raw, and it was a side of her that Liam had never seen before. He felt something stir inside him, a deep connection he hadn't anticipated. He wasn't just part of her plan. He was part of her fight. "I don't know if I can do this," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I will try. For you, for your people, for mine." The Queen's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Liam saw something like hope in them. "That is all I can ask for, Liam. Together, we can do this. Together, we will change the fate of our worlds." And in that moment, Liam knew that whatever the future held, he wasn't facing it alone. They had forged a bond, one born from duty, but growing into something much deeper, something that might just be powerful enough to change everything. The tension in the air grew thick as the days wore on. Liam and the Queen's bond, though still new, had strengthened in ways he hadn't expected. But even as their connection deepened, they both knew that their time was running out. The Queen's people were on the verge of extinction, and their enemies were closing in fast. Liam had learned more about the enemy over the past week, a ruthless, war-hungry species determined to wipe out the Queen's race. They had already destroyed countless planets, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. And now, they were coming for her. One night, while Liam and the Queen were seated in the Grand Chamber, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. The walls began to tremble, and the lights flickered. "What's happening?" Liam asked, his heart racing. The Queen's face hardened, her eyes narrowing with determination. "It's them," she said simply. "The invaders." Liam's stomach dropped. He had known this day would come, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure if he was ready. He had no combat experience, no military training. He was just a man from Earth, caught in the middle of a war between two alien species. The Queen stood up, her voice commanding as she gave orders to her soldiers. "Prepare for battle. We will not go down without a fight." Liam followed her to the control room, where the ship's commanders were already working frantically to defend against the incoming attack. The Queen's face was grim as she studied the tactical displays. Enemy ships were already approaching at an alarming speed, their weapons locked and ready. Liam watched as the Queen took charge, giving orders with a calmness that both terrified and impressed him. He had never seen her like this, so fierce, so focused. She was not just a queen. She was a warrior, and the fate of her people rested on her shoulders. "Liam," the Queen said suddenly, turning to him. "You need to stay close to me. This will be dangerous, but I won't let anything happen to you." Liam nodded, though he wasn't sure if he believed her. He wasn't used to being in these kinds of situations, but he wasn't about to run either. He was in this now, no matter how terrifying it was. As the enemy ships drew closer, the Queen ordered the ship to enter defensive mode. Liam could feel the ship shift as shields activated and weapons powered up. The once peaceful atmosphere of the ship was now replaced with the intensity of war. Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the entire ship. Liam was thrown off his feet, and he quickly scrambled to get back up. The Queen's soldiers rushed to their stations, preparing to return fire. Liam could feel the fear in the air, but he also felt something else, a strange sense of unity. They were fighting for their survival, for each other, and for the chance to make it through this alive. "Hold steady," the Queen commanded, her voice unwavering. "We will fight until the end." Liam couldn't believe how much had changed in such a short time. He was no longer just a pawn in this game. He was part of the fight, standing beside the Queen, ready to face whatever came next. The battle raged on around them. Explosions shook the ship as the enemy ships continued to fire, their weapons powerful and relentless. Liam's heart pounded in his chest as he stood beside the Queen, watching the chaos unfold. He had never imagined that he would be in the middle of a galactic war, fighting for his life and the survival of an entire species. The Queen stood at the center of it all, her eyes fixed on the control panels, her hands moving swiftly as she issued orders to her soldiers. She was calm under pressure, commanding with precision. Liam couldn't help but be in awe of her strength. She wasn't just a queen. She was a leader, a fighter. And in that moment, he realized that she wasn't just fighting for her people. She was fighting for their future together. Liam had been thrown into this war, but now he could feel the weight of his role. He wasn't just standing by. He was a part of this, a part of something bigger than he could ever have imagined. The Queen had entrusted him with her people's survival, and he was beginning to understand why. His bloodline, the prophecy, it was all connected to something far more significant than he had ever realized. As another explosion rocked the ship, Liam's thoughts were interrupted by a voice in his earpiece. "Sir, the enemy ships are retreating." Liam's eyes widened. "Retreating? Are they giving up?" The Queen glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "No, they're regrouping. They know they can't win this easily, but it's a sign. We have to push them back now, while they're vulnerable." Liam nodded, a surge of adrenaline rushing through him. He didn't know how to fight, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to sit idly by. He wasn't going to let Earth or the Queen's people fall. He had a responsibility now, and he was ready to do whatever it took. The Queen turned to him, her eyes softening just for a moment. "Are you ready, Liam?" she asked, her voice steady, but with a hint of something more, something personal, something that made Liam feel like they weren't just allies. They were something more. "I am," he said, his voice firm, though his hands still trembled. "For you, for your people, for us." A small smile tugged at the Queen's lips, and for the first time, Liam saw a flicker of warmth in her eyes. It was brief, but it was enough. In that moment, he knew they were in this together. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for each other. The battle wasn't over, but the Queen had made it clear. The tide had turned. The enemy had underestimated them. Now it was time to finish what had been started. With a final, determined glance at the Queen, Liam prepared himself for what was to come. He might not have been ready for any of this, but now, standing beside the Queen, he felt more prepared than ever to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle had finally come to a tense standstill. The enemy ships, once powerful and relentless, now scattered in retreat. The Queen's forces, despite the odds, had managed to hold their ground. The ship trembled from the aftershocks of battle, but for the first time in days, there was a quiet that hung in the air, filled with both relief and anticipation. Liam stood beside the Queen, watching the view outside the ship's windows. The stars, once distant and cold, now seemed closer, as though they were witnesses to this monumental moment. The Queen's homeworld, her people, had survived for now. But Liam knew that the war was far from over. "The enemy will return," the Queen said softly, her voice a mixture of certainty and weariness. She turned to face him, her gaze unwavering, as though she had seen this moment coming for years. "But now we have a chance, a real chance to rebuild." Liam met her gaze. He could see the weight of her words settling on her, even though she stood tall and strong. She had led her people through the darkest of times, and yet she was still willing to push forward. It was this strength, this unyielding resolve, that had made him believe in her and in their cause. "We'll fight again when they do," Liam said, his voice steady. "But this time, we won't be caught off guard. We'll have time to prepare." The Queen nodded, a small but meaningful gesture. "Yes, we'll use this victory to unite our people, to strengthen our forces. This is only the beginning." Liam felt something shift within him as he stood there with her. The bond between them had deepened in ways he hadn't expected. They were no longer just allies. They were partners. They shared the same goal, the same vision for the future. And even though he had been dragged into this war, he was beginning to see his role in it not as a duty, but as a purpose. "You've done more than I could ever ask of you, Liam," the Queen said, her voice softening. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare moment of tenderness between them. "You've shown me that we can survive, together." Liam looked at her, feeling a warmth spread through him that wasn't just the heat of the battle. It was a connection, a bond that had grown between them. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was part of something bigger, something worth fighting for. "And we will," Liam said. "Together, we'll make sure your people survive. We'll make sure Earth survives." The Queen smiled, a faint but real smile that lit up her face. It was the first time he had seen her smile like that, genuine, without the weight of duty bearing down on her. For a brief moment, She looked less like a ruler and more like a person, someone who had fought for too long and finally found something worth fighting for. As the quiet settled in around them, Liam took a deep breath. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, he didn't feel so lost. They had survived the first battle together, and they would face whatever came next together, side by side. The Queen turned to him, her expression resolute. "Let's prepare. The war isn't over, but we've won the first step." And with that, they walked forward, toward the uncertain future, but no longer alone.